I know up here it's cold, so we're having winter again. It seems like it bounces back and forth between spring, winter, summer about daily. So I'm going to start off just with a quick PowerPoint here, kind of showing everyone what we come up with. So I looked it up, back in about March last year at this time, we were starting to talk about the idea of a nutrient management plan, and that was basically came about because in Senate Bill 150 it said that we needed to develop a nutrient management plan that was in a form that was approved by the Director of Agriculture. So it was tasked to us, and we started this process about a year ago and kind of got together and started determining some of the goals that we wanted to have in this plan. So the first one was provide a tool to create a plan for reviewing plans and also to create plans. So we had that in our back of our mind moving along the whole time, was we need something that can do both of this. So originally we hoped it would just be one spreadsheet, but we quickly found out that we needed to kind of have two different spreadsheets. So we'll go over that here in a little bit. The other part of it was simple. Anyone can use it. That was kind of the design of it, was so that anyone could use it. We take a lot of the calculations out of the back and run them in the background, and then provide a short list of crops and yield goals and so on. At this point it is pretty limited. We hope in the future, if it is getting used, that we may expand it. So that's something we've kind of had in our back of our mind, and hopefully I built it correctly, that it's easy to expand, but we'll cross that bridge as we get there. And it has not been used very much, so we're still always looking for people. Send comments in, send the information, questions to me. If you're going to use it, let me know what is and isn't working, and we'll continue to expand it if it is being used, or we'll kind of let it work its course. So the final thing was reduce paperwork. So the plan will be a one sheet front and back with record keeping and the actual documentation on one sheet front and back. So getting into the first thing is the VRT Review Tool, and this tool is designed primarily just to take the ag retailers' maps and review them to make sure their recommendations are correct, that they're following tri-state. So we can see that you can put in some soil tests, and it will give you a breakdown of what the recommendation should be once you choose your yield goals. So I'll go through it more in a little bit, but this was kind of just some of our ideas when we started the process. Second part is the nutrient management planner. This is designed more for if a guy just brings in a soil test, one soil test for 25 acres or something like that. That is, he may be a small producer, wants a nutrient management plan. This is something you can quickly walk through with them and give them a nutrient management plan to meet their needs. So we'll go through this even a little more. On the back side of each of them, this is a screenshot of the record keeping. So there's 11 record keeping requirements that were named in Senate Bill 150. So on the back of all those sheets, we do have the record keeping requirements. We'd hope that the producers fill them out. They can fill it out electronically, but they can also just handwrite them in. There isn't very much room, but there is a little bit in there to keep the notes. So sorry there. So with that, we'll get into the spreadsheet. I have provided a PDF document on the side that you should be able to download. If you can see that, you can download and follow along with me. Justin did send out the email just prior that has the actual spreadsheet in it. We'll probably be hosting that on our ODA website pretty shortly, so we'll be making that available to everyone, and that's where the updated versions will continue to go out. So at this point, we are in the revision 317. Basically, we are on our third month in 2017. So that is a revision that's currently the one we're following. So that is something to keep in mind, that we may not hold up. It may not hold up if you're using an older version. So make sure you're using a new version, and go ahead and let us know what you think of it. So starting off with the first tab, it is kind of some instructions and some of the background data for where we started with, some of the assumptions we're making with the tool, and instructions on how to use it. A couple notes down here at the bottom is on the nitrogen rates. The nitrogen rates are the one limiting factor as of right now that is preventing it from being NRCS 590, meeting the standards for 590. 590 and Tri-State both call for the economic threshold model to be used for nitrogen. We're using the Tri-State from 1995. It's about a one pound per bushel recommendation for corn. We're using just that base rate, and it's kind of a starting point. We know with nitrogen, we don't really have a good handle on its availability and so on, so we need to take all the factors of tillage, weather, and credits, etc. into it when we're determining nitrogen rate. So the nitrogen rate in here is a starting point, so we're kind of playing that one. If we are seeing use of it, we may try to enter an economic threshold. Maybe we'll add another tab that will throw in the economic threshold, and we'll go from there, and give us the ability to expand the tool and maybe hopefully someday meet NRCS 590 standards. Second one is the custom fertilizer requirement, or the entry. We can enter some custom fertilizer in the spreadsheet, but it is pretty limited. I'll kind of get into that here in a little bit and kind of explain what kind of custom fertilizer we could put in, and we can put some poultry litter and some custom blends or something like that in it, as long as we know the analysis. So just a quick overview of the tool. You can use the tabs on the bottom to toggle in between the screens. The next one is the VRT Review Tool. Following that is a kind of a cover sheet to if we would write a nutrient management plan for the producer. And then we get into the fields, and where we'd actually write a soil test for a person based on what they are looking at. Probably should give myself some time. I know there's a little bit of delay, so I'll start slowing down here a little bit, knowing there might be a delay from what I'm saying and what I'm talking. So just some quick things on the pages. There are print buttons that will show a print preview screen. Those will allow you to see the document before you print it. You can hit escape to go back. There's a clear form buttons that will ask you are you sure you want to clear this field? If yes, it'll clear the form. If you hit no, you're going to lose everything. So make sure you save it before you clear the form. And then for this part of the nutrient management plan, there is an add field button. So you can see at the bottom down here, it'll add another field for you, and you can start work on another part of it. So a couple things going back. Some of the information on the page it does calculate automatically. So if we input data, farmer data on the cover sheet, it will populate on through to the other sheets, so you can see that up here on the top, that my name and other information will populate on through. So getting into our examples, we'll start with the VRT Review Tool, and I'm going to have them here side by side so I can toggle in between them and see all the information and input it as needed. So starting at the top, we're going to want to have the producer's name and their phone number. So we start off with a name, document that. We're also going to want their field name. because that's a required thing, and then the location, whether it's an address, street name, crossroads, whatever. We're going to want to document that on the actual thing. The other thing is you have to say track farm numbers. It's nice to have those on there, kind of go through that. And then let's go down to the actual soil test that we're going to be looking at and see what the acres is as we put it in. So we can see, maybe I don't have it on here, 73.79, so we can punch that in for our acres. Then we can pick a county and just choose Adams for the nice part of it. So getting into the soil test, the idea behind the soil test was to take 3 soil tests from a ag retailer's maps that they provide us and then review them to make sure they're following tri-state. So in the PDF I've provided a soil test, a map showing the soil tests, and then the actual recommendation map. So we're going to take the information in those 3 documents and input them in here and check to see that they're following tri-state. Then I'm kind of going to go through it and kind of say where we're at. So if you can see in the PDF, we have 3 highlighted boxes. So we're going to want to take and put the soil test number. So we have the sample IDs. We're going to go ahead and put the sample IDs in there and move across so that we have the respective ones in their right location. So I've got 3 soil tests here, and we're kind of going to put them in along with the three things we need. So the first thing we need is to document where it's from. You can see over here that the lab name is SureTech. We can see that lab name, so we can put SureTech into the box. We can see when the soil test was, I think somewhere. Sample date is April 2015, so we can put in 2015. The next thing we need to look at is whether it's a Bray P1 and pounds per acre. So we can see that it is a Bray P1 soil test based on the fact that it says P1 here. I don't know if you can see my box, but I'm highlighting it there that it says Bray P1 and it is pounds per acre. So if it is pounds per acre, we need to check the checkbox up here. That is going to give you drastically different numbers if you are not checking that checkbox. So quickly just going through the soil tests, we can punch in the CEC. So the first one is 10.2. You can either use the arrow buttons to move along into the boxes you can write in, or you can use a tab button. Both of them will work. And we can see that the soil test is 57, and then the K level is 175. Make sure I'm right because I can't see it with some of the other boxes that are open. So going on to soil test 15, we're going to punch in the CEC, which is 15.4. If you can remember from our tri-state fertility information we went over, we need the CEC to know how much potassium we can hold in the soil. We need that for the calculation to run the potassium recommendations in tri-state. So moving on, we can see that our phosphorus level is 87 pounds per acre, and then our K level is pretty high at 323. Moving on to the final one that we're going to review, we're at soil test number 26. The cation exchange capacity is 14.3, the P level is 71, and the K level is 306. So now we can start moving on. We have all our soil test data in. We can move on and start reviewing the next part of the plan. So I'm just going to put 2017 in for the year, but we can use whatever date and whatever time we are looking at. So for the time being, we're going to use the crop year 2017. If you were planning for the next year, you might use 2018 and so on. But the next step would be figuring the crops. So if we look through this guy's plan, we can find the crop data down here. I have it boxed in red down here, and then it says that the corn crop. So we're going to go select corn, and we will then select our yield goal. So we can pretty quickly see that the numbers will automatically populate throughout based on the soil test. So once we have selected our yield goals, we will quickly tell us what our recommendation should be. And this is also based on our soil test results. So we can kind of get an idea on what our recommendations are going to be. So next we can see based on the operation that they had 180 bushel corn and also soybeans at 60 bushel. So move on to the next box and it will calculate those out into our recommendations. So we can tell based on looking at these this recommendation map that we have 180 bushel corn, 60 bushel beans, and that we're using 1150-20 or MAP for our product, our fertilizer. Something else to consider is to look at, to get an idea on what you're looking at, is the switch set point. So if you remember from our nutrient management TDP, we talked about the switch point of variable rate controllers. What this set point means is that machine variable rate spreading the product needs at least 35 pounds of products difference before it will change the rate that is applied. So that is something to consider because that is a limiting factor on their recommendations. So if it's in between the two, if Tri-State says it should be lower, but it's above that rate, it is because the limiting factor would be the spreader. So moving on, we have the ability to put in a nutrient credit. So in the blue boxes and the corresponding P and K, we can put in a nutrient credit. That would be for like starter, or if we were broadcasting some chicken litter or something else. So if we had a starter product, we could add 10 pounds or 30 pounds or whatever their starter product is, and that's going to modify what the recommendation is. After reviewing these soil tests and this recommendation maps, it didn't appear that they had a starter, so I'm not going to take credit for that starter. We'll punch it in here in a second just to show you how it does modify that recommendation. So we can see that they have 1150-20. I can go down and start reviewing their recommendations. So I can punch in the product and it will give me a recommendation. So since we can see that if we would put in a starter, if we put in the 10-pound credit, that is going to bring the numbers down. So it is now saying that I'm over applying on soil test 15. So that is something important to note, that we are now over applying if we are giving ourselves the 10-pound credit. So we'll take that back out of there, but it will allow you to do that. So we need to look at our years and also think, okay, this isn't a 1 year, this is a 1 year application of MAP. The recommendation that they have is a 2-year application. So we need to go through and also add a MAP application here for our 2nd year. So we can see that they have a recommendation of, for soybeans and wheat, 128 pounds for our corn crop in 2017 and 92 pounds for our bean crop in 2018. So now we can start looking at the map and figure out what the corresponding recommendations were. So if we look at soil test 13, and I have highlighted them in the red boxes here, you can see that for soil test 13, they're calling for a recommendation in blue which if we go down to the corresponding chart down here, we can see that is approximately 222 pounds based on the blue coloring, knowing that they have 35-pound switch rates. If we did the math, we can see that they are at 220 pounds of product in the blue area. There are 190 pounds or 187.5 in the green area, and so on. So for area number 13, they're applying 222 pounds of product. If we add our recommendations together of 128 and 92, we come up with 220 pounds of product. So they're extremely close, and I would say they fall within the tri-state recommendation. So the next one would be our second soil test. We can see that they have 87 pounds of phosphorus there, so we can pretty much assume that they're not applying any phosphorus because tri-state does not call for it. Going on to soil tests, I have 26 written in, but I think I was looking at 25 or 26. Anyways, they are the same rate. I think they were only a pound or two different on soil test. But going through that, so if we add 58 plus 42 together, that gives us 100, and that gives right at 100, I guess. So we can look down here to the corresponding chart again, highlight it for you to see, and we can see that the first one would be 34. If we add 34 to that, we get about 70, and then we bump up to, if we add another 34 to that, we end up at 104. So our recommendation of 100 pounds of MAP for that area is very close to their 104-pound recommendation. So I would say that this ag retailer is following tri-state with their recommendations and doing a very good job of making a recommendation map. So just quickly going through the other things that we may need to document on the VRT soil test, we can see that a lot of the information is here. So scrolling down in the spreadsheet, we're going to want to then review the other things that we need to document to make sure it is meeting all the needs of a nutrient management plan. So if you did have potash and wanted to check potash, we don't have the potash recommendation maps because we primarily are looking at phosphorus, but you can choose the potash and it will give you the results for potash. So we'd have a good idea on what our potash recommendations would be, or any other product we have there in the list that we want to review. So just getting down here into the checklist, the first thing would be are the soil tests 3 years old or less? So we want to document yes. The VRT application recommendations have been verified to meet tri-state, yes. The identification of all nutrients planned for application are documented. I would go ahead and say no because I don't know if they are using any starter. The next question will kind of cover that also. So I would say no at this point, but then we can use the boxes below to say, okay, we need to get some new recommendations and take credit for that starter. The other thing is the seasonal time. Based on this PDF, does it give a seasonal time and application is documented? I'd say no. So we'd probably want to say no for this one, and then come down here and start typing in that our documentation. So we'd probably want to say no starter was accounted for. And this was a fall broadcast application that was incorporated. Hope no one's using spell check because I didn't know it. If there's any other notes we want to do, we can go ahead and put them down there. We have an area for whoever wrote the plan to put some information, the date it was written, then also. We are going to need that to know who wrote the plan and when they wrote it, so we know exactly if they were using the right version or if a new version was out and they should have been using that. Going down here to the buttons, the new field will bring up a new spreadsheet, and you don't even realize it, a new spreadsheet with all the other information in it. You can you can clear the form, or you can use whatever you need from that to start reviewing another document. So it brings up a whole new spreadsheet, and it is just a VRT spreadsheet, so you can quickly go through them and keep your other data in other spreadsheets, so you're not losing that information as you're going through reviewing them. So we'll close that out.
Okay, yeah. Before you move on to close that, there was one question posted there that it was, I could not see how Kip knew how much was applied.
So we go based on, this is going to be the very tough part. We don't actually know what is being applied. We know what the recommendation is. So if we can see down here on our chart, we can see that they have rates down here. We know from knowing our switch point over here that it takes 35 pounds of product to switch their variable rate recommendation. So we know that. So their recommendations start at 0, which would be down here off the chart. So we can see up here in our different areas where it is 0 based on the very light tan color. This is probably not the best map. Some maps are a little better at showing this, but we can see that those tan color is the 0 application, and we can see that it ramps up very similar to the scale down here. So what it would be is the machines going across the field, it would be a 0 product. The red would be at 35 pounds of product. The orange would be at 70, and then this yellow-orange would be at 104 pounds based on doing the math from the 34 product going up in 35-pound increments and so on. So we can tell from this blue color, if we did the math on out, it ends up being 222 pounds of product based on the 35-pound increments, and we know that, and based on our recommendation, we're at 220 pounds was our recommendation. So they are very close with a 220-pound recommendation and to our 220-pound recommendation for this recommendation map. So I feel that they did a pretty good job here. This does take a little bit of, I've worked pretty closely with ag retailers on this, so I've had a couple explanations firsthand that kind of made it a little easier to understand. But yeah, if you ever have an issue with their map or need some explanation, they will surely give you a good explanation for it. If they can't, you might be questioning their recommendation anyways. So something to think about when you're looking at these recommendations is make sure you understand them. I think that's an important factor. Is there's a lot of companies out there that make very good maps, but a lot of them don't have an understanding. They just know that they print a map off and it looks good and give it to the ag retailer. So that is something that we need to do a good job of making sure we're understanding the map and understanding what we're looking at. So thanks for the question. If you have any other ones, feel free to ask them in the chat box. So I went through the new field. You click that button, a new form comes up. You use the clear form if you want to start over. If you want to leave some of the information in there, you can just go ahead and delete boxes and change boxes as needed. If you're going to do the same farm, yields and crop goals, you can use that, leave that stuff in there, and then just change your soil test to the corresponding soil tests. So I'm going to close that one out and get down into the record keeping. You can input data here electronically. The idea would probably be more that this is handwritten stuff that goes in by the producer at the time of application. And then, as I said previously, you hit print form and it goes to the print preview. So you do have to go and actually hit the print button for it to print out, but you can see that both pages will print front and back, or two pages based on whatever your default settings are on your computer. And hopefully it's a pretty good document. Our idea was to take this, staple it to the front of the ag retailer maps, and we have a nice nutrient management plan that the board could approve. So that is basically the VRT tool. Is there any questions on that before I go ahead and start reviewing the next part?
There was one more question, just confirming how you knew that the soil test was in Bray.
So because it says P1, I'm assuming that it is Bray P1. So if it would say P2 up here on the soil test, we would assume it was Bray P2. I'm making that assumption. If it's ever in question or it isn't noted, call the ag retailer. You know it's from SureTech. Call the person who did the soil test, the actual soil test. They'll give it to you. It should not be an issue. They'll tell you what form it is. And actually, most soil tests are done in Mehlich 3 and converted to Bray P1. Since we're in the Midwest, most soil tests are done as a Mehlich and then converted to Bray P1. So that is one of the notes that is back in the instructions, is that if we look here in the field tab, the tool will convert Mehlich 3 ICP values to Bray P1 using the conversion in Tri-State. So there is a conversion being done. That's all done in the background. So you can pick whatever one it is selected in. But for this one specifically, I'm assuming that it's in Bray P1. If it just said P, I might question it a little bit more. But based on the numbers here, they look pretty much like Bray P1. So something to consider.
The next
Anything else?
Yeah, next question. Was the recommendation based on 2-year application, or did they assume it would be 1 application?
This was a 2-year application, and I can tell that based on the operation they chose for the recommendation, because it says 180 corn, 60 beans. I can assume that that is a 2-year recommendation. If it was only a 1-year recommendation, they are drastically over applying products. So that's where you guys need to develop a good relationship with the ag retailers. If we are reviewing plans, feel free to ask them questions. If you don't understand something, go ahead, try to talk to them. Develop the relationship with the ag retailers. We often see this. One of the examples I did have had corn by itself, it had soybeans by itself, and then it also had the option to do corn and soybeans. So it took those 2 applications and put them together. So this was just one example of it. If you ever have any questions, give those ag retailers a call or ask the farmers to give you an explanation. Was this only a 1-year application? Was this a 2-year application? That might be something you want to document down here in the notes. So if we wanted to write that it was a 2-year application for corn and soybeans at this rate, we could do that. So that is something to think about. Anything else, Justin?
That's all at the moment.
Okay, with that, I will start going into the next part of the slide, and or the next part of the presentation. So we've reviewed the variable rate recommendation maps down there at the bottom, and now I've kind of put in an example of writing a nutrient management plan. So this is primarily our idea, was to provide a nutrient management document that could take average soil tests. We could quickly punch in soil test results and develop a nutrient management plan for producers. If a guy is doing grid soil testing, this is not for them. If a person has livestock, this is not for them. We want those producers to be using CNMPs and utilizing that tool, and I guess that is where we use our partners at NRCS to say, okay, if these people really need a nutrient management plan and they have livestock of any vast quantity, they need to be using a CNMP for that. So we can use our tools over at NRCS and partners over at NRCS to get a CNMP written. So I will move on to the next part. So the cover sheet is kind of just a summary. If we would use this document to make a whole nutrient management plan, we would have some summaries to go off of on and this would be a cover sheet. We can punch in some of the data here, and then that will populate throughout the spreadsheets, or they can be printed off individually if they only have one or two. So we can utilize that to kind of as a cover sheet. So I will just punch in a couple things. One thing that we are going to want to put in no matter what is the starting dates. So this is a 3-year plan. We basically ran out of room, is why we didn't do a 5-year plan, and plus it is very difficult to plan 5 years out. I know for a lot of our CNMPs we are planning 5 years out, but we know that those are going to change drastically in a 5 years. So we ended up going with a 3-year plan, more or less because of a corn, bean, wheat rotation, and we kind of wanted to maintain that throughout. So we did have a 3-year, we had a big discussion on this, and we ended up with a 3-year plan because it is very difficult to plan more than 3 years out. It's probably pretty difficult to plan more than a year out, but we did end up going with the 3 years. Just other note, print just like the other ones, and then the producer name, signature, and so on are down there. I'll show you at the end, once we put a couple fields in, how the products do summarize at the end. But with that, we'll start with the field application, or the field documents. So you can do up to 10 fields in this document. You can use the toggle buttons down here, the buttons, to add fields and so on. So you can already see that a field 2 tab is down here shown. You can toggle in between your fields. If you go to field 2, type stuff in, and then toggle back to field 1 and accidentally hit the field button, and you think, oh no, where did that tab go? Don't worry, it just toggles between hidden and unhidden, so you can just click it and it'll show right back up and you won't lose any information. So that was one thing. It just toggles in between hidden and unhidden, so don't worry if you lose any information there. So starting off with the field name up at the top, we need the field name so we know what field's getting spread on and so on. So we'll just type in home again. We could put in we do want to have a field location. So we have that documented, and then we're going to take the farm number off our example PDF, and then we're going to put in the tract number off that also. Very important that you put in the acres. If you can see the home farm, I have 25.9 acres, and we're going to select Allen, I guess the first one that popped up just because, and that pretty much sets us onto the next thing. So moving into the soil test results, I have placed in the PDF an average soil test results. It doesn't have quite everything we need, but we really don't need calcium and magnesium for the tri-state formulas. It is nice to have it documented because you do get a lot of information from a soil test knowing your calcium and magnesium levels, but it is not required to make a recommendation. So just quickly going through this, I can see that from working with this ag retailer, they use Midwest Labs, and that is what the soil sampling ML means, is Midwest Labs. So I can punch in that Midwest Labs. Was the soil test lab. I can see the year was 2015. I can actually see the date was October 11, 2015. That is, but primarily what we're looking for is the year. I can go down and see that the P1 average is 19.4. In that case, I don't have to punch 19.4, and I could either go with 19 or 20. For this, it's not going to make much difference on it. I will choose 19 just because, as we discussed earlier, the P1 I assume that it's in Bray P1, and then we can see that it is in pounds per acre. So I'm going to want to go ahead and click the box up here that identifies it as pounds per acre. So I can also see that my K is 246. We're just going to round that down for the time being. We can punch in a number for calcium, but it really does not matter. For the recommendation, it's just nice to put it in. We can see that our soil pH, our average soil pH is 6.3. Our buffer pH is 6.8, and our organic matter is 3.9, and our CEC is 14.5. So we have our soil test in. If you have something drastically wrong with the pH, some errors will come up. So I think if it's below 5.6, an error will pop up saying manage pH. So if your pH is extremely low or extremely high, it will not give you a lime recommendation, but it will tell you that you need to manage your pH, preferably with some liming before you do anything else with fertilizer. Your money's going to be best well spent if you are putting on lime instead of investing it in fertilizer. So manage that pH, get it where it's supposed to be, but we're going to punch in 6.3. So we've got our soil test in, and now we're going to start inputting our data for our crop data. So I have put in some yield goals and some crops, and so we're going to start putting in that information. So for 2017, we use the drop down. I have corn at 175 bushels. You can see in the calculations that a lot of time the numbers, as soon as you punch corn, it is going to go to the corn formula, and it is not going to be incorrect until you have a bushel yield goal in there. So something to think about is make sure that bushels is in there. It's very important that you have bushels in there, otherwise it is going to give you some off numbers. We can see that if we choose alfalfa, it changes to tons, and if we have a yield goal of 175 ton alfalfa, we have a lot of alfalfa out there. We're going to need a lot of phosphorus to feed that crop. A more ideal tonnage would be 9, 10, 20. Even those would be pretty unrealistic once we get up into that 15 range, but ideal probably is 4, 5 ton range. So, but getting back, go to the corn, we're going to go back to 175 pound yield goal. You can use the drop down. These are in 5 pound increments, so you can see that there are pretty decent yield goals up to 300 pounds or up to 300 bushels per acre. So for this one, we're going to choose 175 and then go ahead with that. We can see that our second crop is going to be soybeans, and that's 60 bushels to the acre. And then our final crop, we're going to select wheat, and we're going to put in an 80 bushel yield goal. If you have a negative number in the tri-state recommendations over here to the left or to the right, that means you need to go in and adjust your bushel yield goals. So negative numbers are not a good thing. So right below the tri-state recommendations, you can see a nutrient needs. So that it calculates all the nutrient needs for the 3 years of the plan. And then below that is the nutrient planned. So those 3 boxes below the nutrient needs will turn green if you're within 2 pounds either way of the nutrient needs. If you're within 2 pounds, you're doing a pretty good job with nutrient management. As we can tell from the previous exercise that recommendation that needs 35 pounds change. So if we're within 2 pounds, we're doing really well for our nutrient management portions. So as we discussed with all nutrient management plans, we need to take credit for applications that are going to be made maybe at flat rates. So if we start looking at the fertilizers utilized in for our corn crop, we've got 5 different fertilizers utilized in that field. So if I go through them quickly, I can see that they have starter. They're going to side dress with 28. They're going to put on potash in the fall as needed. They're going to do a 2-year application for corn and soybeans per recommendation. And then they're going to put 1 ton of chicken litter on and a 2-year application in the fall. So quickly, if I recognize that they're going to do 5 gallons in starter, I know no matter what, every acre is going to get 5 gallons. So that is where I'm going to start from the nutrient management planning side of it. So my target crop would be corn. I would select 10-30-40, which is the first one here on the drop down, and then decide my rate. So it is, my target would be, you could use either 1 year N or 1 year P, but or I guess for this specific one, it actually would be starter, so that would be the rate. So we would want to select starter. And then we are going to do 5 gallons. When are we going to do 5 gallons? We can see the product now calculates the 5 gallons, so now we start punching in numbers up here in our nutrients plan. So then we move on to the time. I would call starter spring 2017, that is our crop year, and then we can select over here our application method. So we're going to select starter over there. That's a little bit redundant, but it is good to have your application method documented. So going back to the fertilizers, we can see that they're going to spread 1 ton per acre of chicken litter. So that is the next thing we want to take credit for. If we were going to do a flat rate across the field, that is where we want to start. So we are going to start with the chicken litter. So we're going to pick corn crop, and then you're going to go, oh, I don't have any chicken litter in here. That's where the custom fertilizer down here on the bottom comes into play. So we can put in chicken litter, and then we can see that it has an analysis of 40, 40, 20, and then we're going to select pounds per ton. So we know that that is the analysis of, or the amount of nutrients of N, P, and K per ton in the chicken litter. So you can see it when you select on this box. There is a little guidance that pops up and tells you how you should enter the data. So dry fertilizer should be input based on the nutrient analysis, and then you should select pounds. If you're using a liquid fertilizer, the analysis should be just put in based on the analysis, and then select gallons. The one note is that it assumed 11 pounds per gallon. That is a note that needs to be, if someone asks you what the density of the liquid fertilizers, they do vary, but they're in between that 10 and 11 pound range. So we do use the 10 or the 11 pounds per gallon density. So, and then for manure, the number, manure or biosolids, the number should be put in pounds per ton. That is how most of the analysis end up coming back from the lab. So if you have any questions on that, contact someone who knows a little more about looking at analysis, or if you have questions on that, use the resources. We can probably help you figure out what that should be. So if we go up here now, we can go back and select chicken litter. It populates in there. We can do a 1 year P rate, and we are putting on 1 ton per acre. So we put in 1 ton, and then the nutrient data is calculated in there, and then we are doing that in the fall of 2016. So how are we going to put that in there? We are going to put it in as broadcast application, and in this case we're going to plan on incorporating it, as we probably would want to with most our manure or chicken litters. So going down to the next thing, we can see side dress is on there. From this nutrient standpoint, we see that the NPK is 28% 00. We know that we use our side dress to kind of clean up all the other nutrients, or our nitrogen, as it's our biggest user of fertilizer. We want to come in and we want to make our side dress our last application, because we know that we're getting a little nitrogen from our MAP, and we got a little nitrogen from our starter. So we need to take credit for those, and we need to make our side dress application our last one. So the next one I'm going to do is our potash. So we're going to select corn. We're going to select our potash product, and then we're going to say that is a 1-year application of K. This is where the calculations, and you might have to start figuring out, doing a little math in your head here, but I've done it prior. So if we can see up here from our yield goal that we need 67 pounds of K. So I know that we need about 80 pounds of product to meet our recommendation for our K. We can see that with the chicken litter we did get 20 pounds, so that probably plays into that little bit of a credit. So add the two together, we can see we came up with 68 pounds, and that is just for our corn crop. We're going to select fall 2016, and we're also going to broadcast that with incorporation. Next one, very similar to the potash application, but we're going to select a 2-year application, so we're going to have to add our P205 recommendation for corn and soybeans. So we're going to make a little larger application for our potash, or for our MAP. Not saying everyone would do it like this, but just for exercise purpose, I wanted to do some 2-year application. So we're going to select MAP from our product list. We're going to use a 2-year application of P, and we're going to look at about, let's just throw in some numbers. So we're going to punch in 200. We can see that adding our 92 and 76, we end up needing about 100. Oh yeah, we forgot to take credit for our 20 pounds of P205 in our starter and our 40 pounds in the chicken litter. So we have to take credit for them. So if we look at our 164 pounds and we compare that to the 92 plus 76, which is 168, we're really close. So we know that we need to bump this up just a little bit. So let's try in 205. So we're within 1. So if you wanted to say 207, that would be dead on to 168 pounds needed for your corn and your soybean crop. So we have now met our phosphorus needs for our corn and soybean crop on a 2-year application. Next step would be documenting when it is. You can use the drop downs, or you can punch in the numbers right there. Next step, so we've met all our phosphorus and potassium needs for our corn crop. The last one would be our nitrogen. So we're going to use 28% liquid UAN, and we're going to have a 1-year target of N, and we're going to put on, let's try 50 gallons. We can see up here that we need 211 gallons. That's saying we're at 218, so we're a little high. So let's call it 48, and now we're going to be pretty close. If we wanted to be dead on, I think 47 would be, oh, it's a little low, so we can call it 48 and go with there. So we're going to say you need 48 gallons of nitrogen on your side dress application. So moving on down to our second crop. All we're calling for is a 1-year application of potash. So for our soybeans, we're just going to pick potash, quickly go through this, and that is a 1-year application of K. We can see up here that we need approximately 104 pounds of K2O. So if we do the recommendation out, we need, let's see, probably about 125 pounds of it. Nope, we're going to need more than that. We're going to need 150. This is where it takes a little calculations to figure out exactly what you need. So we're up to 170 pounds of potash to meet our needs of our soybeans. So you're pretty close at 175, 174, you're going to be dead on to the 104 pounds needed for that soybean crop. So we're on to the wheat crop. We can see with our wheat that our wheat blend has a custom blend in it that doesn't fall on our chart. So we're going to put in our wheat blend down here and punch in the analysis of 10, 50, 20, and that is the wheat blend that the ag retailer provided, and we're going to choose pounds. So now we can put in our wheat blend, and then that is per recommendation. So we can select our wheat blend. We can have a 1-year target for P, and then we can start punching in our numbers. So I guess based on 128 pounds of P needed, we're going to need about 250 pounds of P. So we're very close. So I can see that we are almost within 2. We're within 3. So we'll see if that works out. This might take some playing around with, because to be within 2 you're going to have to be very close on your recommendations. Is that practical? Probably not. You're probably going to actually apply 175 pounds or 180 pounds or 250 pounds, but you're going to be very close with these recommendations. And for the purpose of it, I like being exact, but you can play around with it to see how close you can get. So we've addressed that wheat. When's the other main wheat application? Wheat, and then we top dress that in the spring. Oh, we're missing a lot of applications over here, so I'm quickly going to fill those in, and otherwise we're going to get some errors down there on the product summaries. So I'm going to change that real quick and add some time and place data to reflect our 4 R's. So that would be a fall application, and we'd call that a fall application in 2017. So getting back to our wheat blend would probably be, since it's a 2019 crop, we're going to select fall 2018, and then we're going to probably broadcast that without incorporation. So our final nutrient application would be our wheat top dress. So we're going to select 28, or liquid UAN 28%. And we can see that we need approximately 304 minus the 238, so we need about 70 pounds of product. So we're going to quickly punch in a number here and see what we come up with. So let's start at 20 gallons and see how close we are. So 20 gallons gives us 60 pounds of product. So let's try 22, and now we have met our yield, or our N requirements for the 3 years of the program. You can see that our N and our P are correct at 304 pounds and 294 respectively, and our P, or our K, is slightly high. So if we wanted to go in and adjust this, we might say this is 173, and now all 3 boxes light up. Is that really practical? Probably not, but to be exact, we may want to have them as close as possible so the producer actually knows. The likelihood of them spreading 173 pounds of product is probably not going to happen, but something to think about. So we can see down here, moving on to the next one. Oh, one last thing. Punch in our final data, make sure we have it, everything accounted for. So we could call that a foliar feeding on wheat when we're top dressing our wheat. So you can see down here in the product summary that some of the numbers are calculated out. So we do have a product summary on how much product we would need based on our acreage. So if we are getting an error down here, the most common thing I see is that we don't have an acre down, or an acres. So if we don't have acres in, we don't get a product summary. The other thing is if we don't have the season times the years. So because those go into calculations to determine when we are going to need those products. So I know I went through that pretty fast, but we're almost to the end. So we can see that there are some notes on here. Nitrogen is the main one. please consider crop rotation credits, tillage, weather, your source rate, timing, and place when determining your nitrogen rates. And then there's a little box down here. If you did have some notes, maybe this guy uses cover crops or something like that, you could add that in. Once again, we have the plan writer, who wrote the plan, who was it checked by, and so on. And then we have our page 2 of the document, which is our record keeping. So that is the quick and dirty of it. We could go right on to our next one and start in on the next field. But for today, we're just going to do that one. Hopefully it provided you guys with a better idea on how to use the spreadsheet and what it's capable of. It is pretty limited with the crops that are available and the products that are available, so that is why we added some of the custom fertilizer stuff in, so we can add a couple products in there. That being said, if you are using the VRT Review Tool, you can select a product, put in on the Field 1 tab. You can select a product over here on the VRT tab, like the chicken litter and wheat blend that we put in on Field 1, or just the Field tab. You do pop up in the list once you have input them on the Field tab. And then they are available throughout the spreadsheet based on there. And actually the Field 1 is the only place where you can put that data in. Field 1, that's the only place you can put that custom fertilizer. It does carry through to the other spreadsheet, so you do know the amount of the fertilizer and what the fertilizer is, but Field 1 is the only place you can put in those custom blends or chicken litter products on it. So I guess to respect your time, I think we're probably going to wrap this up pretty quickly. Justin, if there is any questions, we could take a couple maybe.
Are there any questions? I don't see any typed in. And here comes one.
Must mean we did a good job.
Did a very good job.
We covered a lot of information.
Well, this is actually comments, so we should not be showing N based on yield goals. Maybe that should be an asterisk that explains the website to go to, determine the economic rate.
Yes, that was one thing that I have forgot to put in this spreadsheet, was the economic rate. I think it does say on the instructions to make sure you are using the MRTN. Yes, I will add a link to that website in there. My comment on that is, if we could figure out nitrogen rates, we'd be rich people, because for accounting for nitrogen is very tough. So this is the starting point. I would never exceed the nitrogen rates that Tri-State does call for on here, but yes, we should be using the economic threshold for our nitrogen rates.
There's one other comment that had mentioned some errors they had with it, some error references, and I'll have you contact that person directly to solve any of those.
Yeah, I have found a couple over the last couple days, and so I've been addressing them. There was one with the potassium recommendation. So if you were looking at a previous sheet, hopefully I've got them corrected on this one. So we're slowly working on it.
If you have any questions with the tool, definitely contact Kip, phone, email, kip.studer at just our standard agri.ohio.gov. If you have any emails, 419-429-8329. That's correct, right, for your office number?
Yep, that's my office number.
Okay, so please, as you get working on this and going through it, if you have any questions, let him know. It's pretty good tool for as complicated as and custom as it can be. I think they've come up with a real good, simple solution. With that said, I think we'll conclude the webinar. This is Friday. Enjoy your remaining day and your weekend. And again, please contact us if you have any questions, and we'll be posting additional webinar information here in the future, probably more on the back to moving to GIS and CAD. So again, thank you all, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks for attending, guys.